right, everybody, welcome back to Culz Interviews. Today we got a fun one planned for you guys. We're going to talk a little bit Billy the Kid, a little bit podcasting, and a little bit of music. We're pretty excited to have James Townsend joining us, aka Cardigan Kid. Some of you might know him by. So, James, how are you doing? And for anyone that doesn't know you, I do want to give him a little background.
Yeah, I'm good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. Super exciting always to talk about Billy and anything related. So I live in West Virginia. It's on the quite a few states away from New Mexico, but I got into Billy the Kid during the pandemic. Growing up, I had seen Young Guns 2 in the theaters, and that kind of sparked my interest, like anybody else, in the legend of Billy the Kid. And of course, we all kind of get hooked on that. That's the typical story that you hear. People watch Young Guns or the sequel, and then that brings them in. But beyond just an appreciation for that archetypal symbol or legend, it was just about like anything else. But over the pandemic, I decided I want to write a novel. What would be a good subject for a novel? And I thought I've always loved Billy the Kid. So I was kind of kicking around ideas for that, and I was like, to write a novel, I want to be totally up to speed on the research and have everything, all my ducks in a row. So I started reading up. I bought a few books, the typical, The West of Billy the Kid by Frederick Nolan, Billy the Kid, Short and Violent Life by Utley, just researching. And then I found myself addicted to the research, and the novel kind of took a back seat, and it's still taking a back seat, for 4 years later. But I I got involved in the community. What really started it was I'd read I began doing my own research, and I came across a newspaper article in Arizona that said that Frank Cahill, he was the man that Billy the Kid murdered or killed in Arizona in Camp Grant. It was the first man supposedly that Billy killed. And I came across an article that said that Frank had stabbed a man in the back like a month before. And in all the biographies and books that I read, I never came across that mention. And I thought that's kind of like an interesting contextual piece of the story to kind of shed light on what kind of person this Frank Cahill guy was. And so I didn't know anybody in the scene. So I just looked up, Wild West magazines and stuff like that on Google, and went to the True West website, and I just put in their contact form and was like, "Hey, is this a known piece of information about Frank Cahill? I've never seen it before." And Bob Bose Bell wrote me back and was like, "Actually, this is a neat find." And James Mills, the author of the new book Billy the Kid, Bandito Simpatico, wrote me as well and was like, "Hey, this is a good find." And I kind of got to know James, and that's kind of how I got into the Billy the Kid world, was that little nugget of info. And they published that little blurb in the July 2021 issue of True West, I think. And I had actually emailed Bob Bell, just a thought. I was just talking to him. I didn't write it. I didn't proofread it as a published art. I just wrote him a little thought I had about Johnny Mackey. And Johnny was the guy who rode with Billy in Arizona and who was a horse thief with Billy. And he'd gotten into some trouble beforehand. And they ended up publishing that too. And I was like, oh my God, they published an email that I just wrote to Bob. I didn't even proofread it. So that was my intro into it. And I've just been researching ever since. And, people talk, it's weird when you're kind of established as like someone that people come to on Facebook or in these groups to ask questions. And, I'm no expert, I'm no historian, I have no certifications or degrees in the field. I just read a lot of books. And if I can help people, that's great. But I just like to talk about Billy. And then, I was on Michael Judicissi's podcast for a few episodes and really enjoyed it. And then so after I quit doing stuff with him, I kind of started my own. And that's under the auspices of Billy the Kid's Historical Coalition. And so we've been putting that on for a few months now. We're just having a blast. Other than that, I'm a musician, songwriter, and have a day job that's boring, and just live my best life, man.
Yeah, no, Michael and James are both good guys. We've worked with both of them, so yeah.
Yeah.
But I can relate for sure. I mean, besides the boring day job, which I think Sam can say as well, because I mean, I don't know. We've been interested in Billy the Kid. I've been going to New Mexico yearly since I was like 5 or 6. Um, but the group as a whole has been going, I think, since 2020. Sam, I believe, every year, and we
Wow.
wanted to.
Yeah, it was 2020.
Yeah, and we wanted to film a Billy the Kid little, uh, just a little video for our YouTube channel. Like, we have one on JFK and stuff, and so we got an actor, Jeremy, to play Billy and Grayson to play Pat Garrett, and we filmed all these scenes. And
Mhm.
our research, much like you said, that kind of went on the back burner, and we've just kept researching and going deeper. It's definitely a rabbit hole for sure.
It is. Have you guys released that? I mean, is that out to watch or anything?
No, there's the trailer. It's like 20 seconds and
Nice.
it's not super well edited. Um but yeah, it's on there at least. I've played around different ways to bring it up to date with what we know now. And I've thought about keeping Jeremy in as maybe the mythologized Billy the Kid. And then we've become friends with Jor-El Vosborg, who played him in Nat Geo's Billy the Kid.
Hmm.
New Evidence. And so I was like, well, maybe we'll have him play like the more like truthful Billy, and we'll kind of have like that play off of each other. But yeah, as far as now, it's still pre-production, I suppose you want to call it. Got put back down there.
It's crazy because it's like there's never a point where you finish researching to where you're comfortable with like, okay, now I can tell the story. It's like, no, I need to keep researching. So I wrote a musical. I have a Billy the Kid musical that I've written that's complete. But I didn't write the music for it because I'm kind of a folk singer, indie folk type stuff, and I just don't have the qualifications to write for a musical. So I have a friend who's writing the music, but when I go back and look at it, I wrote that probably in 2021 or 2022, and I'm like, man, I've learned so much since then that I could go back and rewrite the whole thing, but I don't want to. You just got to put a pin in it at some point. But
Right.
yeah, if I had just it would not be the same now as it was then because you just never stop. You never stop accumulating facts and things that change the narrative.
Well, and then you grow as like a writer yourself, you know. I've
Yeah.
seen that because in high school I used to love writing, I guess, like short stories that were like 100 pages or so, and people would read them. And I've gone back and rewritten some of them like 2, 3 times, and each time I think, okay, this is even better. But then I look at it a few years later, I'm like, oh, I can add here and here and here, and yeah, it's amazing what time can do. And like you said, I think reading itself has a lot to do with that because
Hmm.
the more you read, the more you learn how to write, I think, or how not to
Yeah.
write sometimes.
And that's my biggest hurdle as a writer is I continually self edit to the point that I don't produce hardly anything.
Yeah, I've been much better on YouTube scripts versus like novels. Maybe one day I'll sit down and do one.
Yeah, I mean, I can do YouTube scripts, shows, I can do songs. I can crank out a song in 5 minutes and be fine with it. But for some reason, I find writing fiction is so rewarding uh spiritually for me in terms of like what I get from it non-materially that I want it I have almost a higher internal standard for it than I do with my music or anything else. So nothing's ever good enough when it comes to writing fiction. And so I can never just allow myself to create it and put it out. I always have to be like, that's not good enough.
Yeah, I guess it is different with fiction because you can always expand, you can always add. Where the truth, a lot of people will get mad if you add stuff, even if we don't know anything there. And so you're kind of
Hmm.
like streamlined. Yeah, no, I've seen it. I'm not a fan of everything Billy the Kid, but I'm okay with it.
Well, absolutely. That's like that new show on Epics. I think it's kind of terrible as far as writing goes, but I'm super pumped that people are watching it and getting into Billy the Kid. I know a few people personally that they've gotten interested in Billy the Kid because of that show. And they're very active now in researching and learning, and it's fantastic. But personally, I think it's just bad writing.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen too much of it. I kind of stopped after episode 1. And not for like historical inaccuracies or whatever, but more just cuz I don't know. It's kind of like Twilight level writing and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
Oh, he
yeah, it's just not
sparkles.
good writing.
No,
Yeah.
he doesn't
Yeah.
sparkle. Yeah, no, that's
He sparkles when he's around a horse he wants to steal.
yeah.
Oh,
Hey, Sam's favorite Billy the Kid movie is definitely not very accurate, but he
I mean,
enjoys
I
Which
it.
think
one's
it's
that?
pretty accurate. Billy Kid versus Dracula.
That's how it went down. That's the untold story.
Oh man, that movie. We're gonna do a deep dive sometime with John LeMay on that one because we always give him crap
Oh,
every time we see him. Yeah, our favorite part is like you can't kill him, Dracula, by shooting him, but they like throw the gun at him. He just like passes out.
I
Yeah,
got to be honest. I haven't watched that yet, so that's on my list.
You
it's
should. It's quite interesting.
yeah,
I can't wait.
it's not Tammy the T-Rex level interesting, but it's
Uh,
how these people don't know that Dracula is clearly not from the Old West. I don't know. Well, do you have a like top 3 favorite books perhaps on Billy the Kid?
if we're talking, I mean, I gotta say that Mill's book is my favorite right now. Um, I think Mills is a great writer, and as a writer, to me, that's first and foremost in how I approach a work and judge it. Its readability is just off the charts, in my opinion. Plus, he credits me in the acknowledgments, so I can so I've got to give it the thumbs up for that. But no, to me that book is the most comprehensive and well written introduction to Billy the Kid. Like if somebody wants in one volume as much info as they can get on the accurate story of Billy, then it's going to be that one, in my opinion. Um, I really like Nolan's Lincoln County War documentary history. Um, to me was more enjoyable and more informative than his West of Billy the Kid. Um, I really like. Okay, you said top 3, but I'll give you two, two more that I can't pick between, and that's if you want to do deeper dives. Trailing Billy the Kid by Philip Rash. It has a lot of good material in there, a lot of good research articles and things like that, and The Capture of Billy the Kid. And that book is like a compilation of firsthand accounts of what went down at Stinking Spring, and it's got a lot of valuable resources in it too. Um, as far as fiction books about the kid, I haven't read many because since I started out as wanting to do a novel about Billy, I didn't want it tarnished or kind of informed by other books. I do have quite a few fiction books about Billy. They're right here is a stack of them. I just haven't read them yet because I just don't want to color my intent and my story. So it'll probably be years before I read them. I tried to read The Kid by Hansen. It's the same guy that did
The
the assassination of
assassination.
Jesse James. And man, I just thought it was terrible. I couldn't make it 2 or 3 chapters. I just thought it was just bad writing. So I was really surprised at how much I didn't like it. I try not to be a snob about that stuff, but I just didn't enjoy it. So that's the only one I've tried, I think. Oh no, there's one. I don't know if you guys have read it. The Collected Works of Billy the Kid. It's kind of like it's supposed to be poetry. It's by the guy's last name is it's like Finnish or some kind of European name. It's Ondaatje or something. And it was fun. I really liked it. It's a small book, easily readable, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've not touched that one. I was like looking at my bookshelf. Like I've read The Kid. I read that when I had foot surgery, so I really didn't have a lot of options but read or sit there.
Well, I mean, how is it? How's the rest of it? Should I go back and give it a shot?
I don't know. I think it stays pretty level on quality. It gets a little bit better towards the end, I'd say. It's not as good as Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah,
I
if folks
picked up
can read backwards.
I picked up one when we were in Fort Sumner, like Bullet for Billy or something.
I
Um,
have that on my Kindle. Yeah,
okay.
this one I really enjoyed. It's Billy the Kid by Peter Meach, and it's not about the historical Billy. It's kind of brushy esque. It's about this old guy who lives in some um, I feel like it's like maybe a Colorado town or something, and he claims he's Billy, and it's just a nice little story about his old timer tales, and that was a really fun read. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I guess since we mentioned John LeMay, I should mention his novel series that he has because I really enjoyed his second one too, Once Upon a Time in Fort Sumner, and it really kind
Yeah,
of gives the Billy the Kid and Brushy Bill lovers something without like
nice.
taking away. I don't want to ruin it. Obviously
I own
James's
both of
book is really
those.
good. Do you?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I haven't read them yet, so I look forward to that.
Yeah, I especially enjoy the second one. We have a member of our group who's Navajo, so we've heard
Mm,
all about skinwalkers from him. So that was
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, no, looking. James's was really good. Um, my favorite too. I think my favorite before that was the Endless Ride, but James just
Yeah.
added so much more to it.
Um,
You know.
I will tell you, I don't know if you guys have seen this one. This is a huge book. It's Chasing Billy the Kid
Oh, I have.
by
I don't have it, but I've seen it. Yeah.
Kurt House and Roy Young. This thing, it's like 70, $80. It's really expensive, but it's amazing. It's a great book. I would say that's probably one of my favorites now.
Okay.
It's newer than Mill's book, I think.
Yeah, I saw it pop up like because I know we're in like similar Billy the Kid groups, and every once in a while, you'll see new book pop up here and there, and I always
Hmm.
add it to my list, but we're so busy, it's hard to always get to all of the books.
Oh yeah. I mean, I got so many books to read and no time at all. And plus I still like to kind of supplement my reading diet with fiction to kind of just
Mhm.
keep me level. And so right now I'm reading some Anne Rice, and it's like I've got thousands of books to read, and now I'm rereading books I've already read, you know. It's
Right?
like I just can't get away from it.
Yeah, no, I feel you there because we do so many interviews, and a lot of time the guests will send us books to read so we can talk about it. And so I'm reading all of those, and I'm just like, sometimes I want to read one of mine. So I just picked up Sam Neill's autobiography and have
Mm,
been reading that
wow.
one. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, I
pretty
bet
fun
that's a good
one.
read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just little short stories that he penned while he was going to his cancer treatments and stuff like that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's interesting. So you talked a little bit about Young Guns. How do you feel about that movie now? Do you still enjoy it? I mean, obviously
Oh
we know
yeah.
it's inaccurate, but it's still
Mhm.
fun, right?
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things I love about art and fiction is that, it's a completely different goal. As a historian, you want to report what happened. You want to document and, get as close as you can to the truth of, things that happened. But as a fiction, if you're producing any work of fiction or telling a story, it's a completely different goal. Your goal is to tell a story and to weave together themes and to speak to a different part of a human being. So history is more cerebral, storytelling is more spiritual, and I use that term not religiously but just non-materially. It's more, it speaks to the spirit and soul of a person more than their brain and their learning faculties. So yeah, I love when people take liberties with history to tell a good story. And, in my opinion, Young Guns 2, I actually like better than the first one. And that may be nostalgia because I saw it first and I didn't know anything going in. I just saw it in the theater. But to me, there are more archetypal themes in the second one that kind of are universal. The whole Billy the Kid is Robin Hood or as, the resurrected hero, all that's in the second one. And I think those are like universal human archetypes that just speak to me a lot more than just the first one. The first one's just a cool action movie, but the second one, man, it just, I don't know, it left an imprint, and that's why I like it. But yeah, I love those movies, and I think John Fusco. I don't know if I'm butcher that last name or not, but yeah, master at the craft. All his movies are pretty good, and he did a great job. I don't know if he'll be surpassed in terms of thematic storytelling for Billy the Kid.
Well, plus the second one has the iconic like soundtrack alongside of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
And
know,
Christian Slater.
yeah. Right. Well, I know we did a deep dive on the first Young Guns. I think that one we like. I mean, I think Young Guns 2 I do like better, which might surprise Sam, but I enjoy Young Guns 1 because we've been to Corellios where they filmed it,
Mm.
which is just so cool because you're walking around and it's not very different outside. It's paved. They just covered it up
Wow.
in the movie with dirt, but yeah, it's so cool to see the location. Be like, oh, that's where this happened or that happened. And some
Oh,
of
I
them
bet
they
that
still
was
have like
cool.
Dolan store up and stuff like that written on the buildings.
Wow. Very
Right.
cool.
So, how many locations have you been to for Billy the Kid?
My first time in New Mexico was last August and late July, early August. I can't really remember. Like I told you on Messenger, I have no concept of time. But I drove out there, and it was for Old Lincoln Days. So I met Josh Slatton. He's the one of the directors of the coalition, and I met him at his house in Texas, and we rode together to Lincoln. And so I visited all the sites in Lincoln. We went to Fort Stanton and the cemetery there. We went to the Great House Ranch site. Um, we went to where else? We went to the Padilla home, the ruins of the Padilla home, which is where Eugenio Salazar was after Billy escaped from the Lincoln jail. He went there to get his chains hammered off, and so we went to that little. It's like a three walls of a rock house all grown over, and I did not make it to Fort Sumner, so that's I got to get back to do that. We just didn't have time. It didn't pan out, the way I wanted it to in that regard, but everything I saw was just amazing. Just an amazing experience, And I know you guys talk about, the paranormal here and there on this channel, and I always say like there's something supernatural about going into New Mexico, man. It's just a weird vibe. Not a negative vibe at all. It's like but it's something different there. And it was tangible. You could feel it. It was very odd. It was an odd experience.
Yeah, we have a story from our last trip because, like I said, we go every June now for the big Roswell Festival and hang out with John and stuff like that. But we were staying in Hondo, New Mexico, so just outside Lincoln there, and we've taken this drive multiple times at this point. We know about 8.5 hours from where we live, and I remember going and we're watching it, and we have the directions on, and it's just saying, "All right, we've gone another 100 miles, but the time hasn't moved up. It's going backwards. Like it's getting longer and longer." And it ended up taking like 10.5 hours. And we're like, why? Like, what happened? But I remember Matt at one point, he was just like, are we in a time vortex? And I was like, I'm glad someone else noticed it because this is weird. But yeah, Sam had a pretty good point because we ended up in Lincoln because we wanted to stop at the brewery there, and then get the green chili cheeseburgers at the food truck because they're really good. But we found out the caretaker at our Airbnb had passed away in the front lawn that day.
Oh,
And so they
oh
were
wow.
trying to contact us, and we're like, oh, maybe that's why it took longer. you know, I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, it was weird. I stayed with Steve Cedarwall when I was down there, and I was standing out on his porch one night and just looking out onto the horizon, and I was thinking like anywhere else, you look out in the horizon, it's a pretty night. That's the end of it. But honestly, in New Mexico, it felt horizon was staring back at me. It's so weird. It's like you interact with existence and nature in a weird way there that I've never felt anywhere else. And I don't even like trying to articulate it that much because you end up sounding like you're insane. It's just weird, man. It was cool. I can't wait to go back.
Right. Is Steve up in Capitan?
Yep. Yep,
Okay.
that's where he is. He's a great dude. I really enjoyed it. I still talk to him about every day.
Yeah, no, we've seen him a lot. I know when we would watch Michael's channel, we'd hear about Steve a lot, and he seemed
Yeah,
really cool. Did you ever get to meet
yeah. He's
Drew Gomber?
never met him. Um, Honestly, I never spoke with him at all. Not even through email or interacting online. Only heard of him and obviously his reputation. It's unfortunate that he passed on, but he did a lot uh for the community and was a noted historian.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was a bummer there. Kind of came out of the blue. When you were at some of these sites, like, was it more just like you had read about it and now you're there and you can put like the pictures to the place kind of deal, you think?
It helped a lot. Fort Stanton, I had no idea it was. Honestly, I thought it would be a lot more barren and depressing, and we pulled in, and there are all these buildings and this green grass, and I'm like, "Oh, this is what is this place?" And they're like, "This is Fort Stanton." And I'm like, "What? This is Fort." I pictured it in the middle of just brown desert, and blistering heat and just, nothing but barrenness. And we pulled in, I was like, this is nothing like I imagined, and it's all in this square, and the buildings are well kept up and just nice. And I was just really surprised by Fort Stanton. And um we drove into Lincoln at night, the first time we got there, and no one was out. The place was empty, and we had the windows down, and there was a just this fragrance in the air. And we stopped at the courthouse, and you could stand in the middle of the street and nobody's around. And we walked up to the window that Bob was shot from, and to stand there in person and to look up and to see how imminent that would have been, because you've seen pictures of it, you've seen it in movies, but to look up and see, like, man, with Billy hanging out that window with that gun, it's like right there. It's very close. And it just I yeah, being there put it in a completely different perspective. Not to say that if you've never been there, then you don't know. Like, that's obviously, there's this historic elite attitude a lot of times that I don't buy into, but it definitely provides a lot of context and was amazing experience and spiritual at the same time.
Yeah, no, I agree there because I love dinosaurs, and until we can figure out time travel, I'll never be able to go there. So, yeah,
Man, I
that's
wish we could.
right. Yeah, there's so many things we could answer, you know.
I know. I wish we could time travel so bad.
Right. I mean, I guess technically we could, but you can only time travel into the future by going off planet and then coming back. And not as
Yeah,
exciting.
no, and not as efficient or anything.
Right. Yeah, no, I'll say though, when we because we haven't been in the Tunstall store. Every time we go, it's closed.
Mm,
But going inside the courthouse, the stairs are just so tight. You know, it's
right.
so hard to imagine some of the purported ways Billy escaped happening because of just how tight it is.
And there was a landing there when
Mhm.
these times. So there was a landing halfway up that isn't there now too. That obviously changed the layout a little bit. So it's a tad different, but yeah, very narrow staircase.
Matt, do you have any Billy the Kid questions? Because I don't want to take over the interview like I usually do.
Not really any questions. I just always found Billy the Kid to be, fascinating. I love his story and just how unique of an individual he was. Being the ladies' man, but yet the deadly type.
It's odd what sometimes I think about why I'm so fascinated and honestly probably a little clinically obsessed with Billy the Kid, because growing up I've never been like a Western aficionado. And I love the Old West now. I've learned a lot getting into Billy, but it was never the Old West that drew me in, and it was never that time period. It was always the person of Billy the Kid. And I've often wondered what it is about Billy that captivates so many of us. I've talked to a lot of people. Um, I run a Facebook group called The Life and Legend of Billy the Kid, and it's got 32,000 members in it now. And the guy I run it with two folks, Rob, and Rob is in Sweden, and Mel, and she is in England. And it's people all around the world. James Mills is in Australia. Uh, Around the world, we're all captivated by this little 21-year-old boy who lived in backwards part of New Mexico territory in the 1880s, and it's just like, what is going on here? And you have to think it's something supernatural, or at least mythological, that's happening. um and it's food for thought for me, uh for quite a while. I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about what it is that pulls us in, even to the extent of, like, is he trying, is there some spiritual Billy the Kid being out there trying to get us to tell his story right? Is he wanting something set right? It's just so powerful a pull, but I don't know. Elvis gets the same kind of thing. Robin Hood, all kinds of weird kind of niches. But do you have any thoughts along those lines about why we all become so obsessed with this one character?
I just sorry, Keegan. I'm just jumping into kind of go off kind of what you're saying. Some of these people are just so iconic. You almost think of them as the cryptid. Like maybe it's a Bigfoot type thing. Did these people really exist? Was he really out there? What was his real story? And I would love to seriously have a talk with Billy. Be like, hey, just tell me everything. What's your story? Like, what an incredible interview or opportunity that would be, just to meet at a bar or whatever. Just to live that thing. But that's kind of like in the back of my head. I look at it more of, what was he actually like, and was he really who he was, or are we in that world of a fairy tale type thing?
Yeah, I'll kind of go off of that one too, because I have familial connections to the James gang. Well, I've made pilgrimages out to Missouri and stuff like that. I don't feel the same connection, even though there's a familial connection there, as I do with Billy. And like, I can't explain it. I don't know if it's because there is so much that's unknown still. And so there's kind of like that draw, like, what else can we figure out? Like with Jesse James, there's so much stuff that perhaps we know, but maybe it's a little bit of that live fast, die young, like James Dean is another person I'm really
Hmm.
interested in. So maybe it's just we're interested by people that lived kind of extraordinary lives but died so young.
I think it's for me is that like he was like he didn't like choose the life kind of chose him essentially by like things that happened. So like he was like thrown into it and like was winging it essentially, but then also stayed super humbled like the entire time. Besides like certain scenarios, but like even then it was just like more justified than it was like him just like being like an outlaw like many of the other outlaws were like doing it. Like he was
Hmm.
doing it like for like a greater cause essentially, or what he thinks is a greater cause, but like also looks like a greater cause because like he was doing it more for the people than just doing it for like personal gain.
Kind of like a Butch Cassidy, right? We went up to the prison where Butch Cassidy was imprisoned up in Laramie. And that was kind of neat. You can see the safe that he blew up and everything. And
Oh,
like,
wow.
I think a lot of times it's personality too. Like, you
Yeah.
read about all these outlaws and they had something that made them stand out. Jesse James is very much a flair for the extravagant when he's doing his stuff. Like, he's even writing the what to tell the newspapers, or Butch Cassidy robbing from the rich, giving to the poor, and in the fact of people he knew. But yeah, I think sometimes it's personality too, just helps these people kind of transcend time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, to be talked about over and over about, yeah, that kind of personality. The kid had charm. He was always a friend. People remember that. They tell tales over campfires about it, and it morphs, and it grows, and it becomes a myth. It's a very cool process to study. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think too another thing that helps their stories kind of stay in the public eye was in the late like 30s and 40s. We had a bunch of people coming out pretending to be them, be
Oh,
it J. Frank
100%. Yeah.
Dalton or Brushy Bill or Walk Along Smith, or
Mm.
we had the fake John Wilkes Booth in Texas, like
Yeah.
fake Butch Cassidy. So I think that too also helps bring about it into a new generation of people to bring it up. And then you have like movies also help kind of bring it along too.
Oh man, the old timers of the 40s and the 30s that just told those tales, they fascinate me in their own light. And I've studied J. Frank Dalton a lot. I've studied Brushy Bill a lot, and I'm just fascinated by those guys. And to this day, unless you believe that J. Frank was Jesse James, if you don't believe that, then we have no idea who he was still. And so that's a mystery in and of itself.
Yeah, personally, I don't believe J. Frank Dalton was Jesse James, mainly because of the family stuff, like I said. But
Right.
I still made the out of way pilgrimage when we were down in Texas to go visit his grave, and you know, I still think it's
Oh yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. And where is he, in Granbury or
Yeah, yeah,
Gladewater?
he's in between. Is it Glen Rose and Heiko? Because it was the same
Mm,
trip that we went and visited all the Brushy Bill stuff in Heiko and
yeah.
Hamilton.
Those scheming old timers, man.
Right. Well, it makes you wonder, like, what was? I think that's something fascinating. Like, because we talk about Brushy Bill and all that, even though I don't believe he was. I still find the story fascinating, and I also
Oh, me
find
too.
it like, what was it about that little part of Texas where all of a sudden you have all
I know.
these fakes coming up? Like, why? Like, what was in the water? You know?
Yeah, yeah. And like there's some kind of linchpin that we haven't found yet that's going to tie all this together. The J. Frank Dalton. You have Uncle Kit Carson, who
Hmm.
was this phony who lived in New Mexico, and they all knew each other. And they all had this kind of weird confederacy of frauds. And there's something we haven't, some kind of connection we haven't, overturned yet. Um, and once we do, it'll make a lot more sense if we ever do. But it fascinates me to no end as a story on its own.
But yeah, and there's so much Wild West out there that we've not touched just because, our way of travel, we have that simple street
Right.
now that goes down the road. And, but way back when, who knows the different paths and alternate routes that there were, probably by far more than there are today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The Hamilton stuff was fun. I don't know if you've ever been there. They were all super nice to
No.
me at the museum. They were. We told them what we were doing, and we were because we went down there to film for that Billy the Kid stuff, and we were gonna integrate that into the documentary we wanted to do. And um, yeah, they were all very nice. And I always tell people to go there, even if it's not what you believe. It's still history. It's still fun, and there's still lots of cool things to go see down there.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even if Brushy were proven without a doubt to not be Billy, and they renamed it the Brushy Bill Museum, I would still visit it, and because I love the story. And Brushy has made himself a part of the Billy the Kid story now,
right,
no matter how it turns out.
yeah,
He's a
no, for
feisty
sure.
old man.
Yeah, him and then oh, what's the one from Arizona?
John Miller.
John Miller. Yeah,
Mhm.
I started to read Gil Cooper's book on that, but I did not finish it. So
Well, she's hard to
not.
read.
Yeah. No, believe me, Sam
She
heard a lot about it when I
yeah,
was reading her Billy the Kid
she's
or
a
Brushy Bill one.
she's a great researcher, but man, it's just hard to read.
It's
Really
like
hard to read.
textbook, as I like to call them,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is hard. You
Yeah,
got
I've
to
got a
make it fun.
yeah, or just, somewhat organized and coherent, and it's just a word vomit of facts, and it's kind of
Right.
hard to keep involved with.
Do you know anything about the Walk Along Smith character? Because I know John's
Not
mentioned
much.
him.
Yeah,
Okay.
only the bit that John has in that Tall Tales and Half Truths of Billy. He talks about him in there, but I don't know if Walk Along Smith ever claimed to be Billy. The same as John Miller. John never told people in any official capacity he was Billy. He might have told friends, or friends might have claimed he said that, but both of those guys never made a push like Brushy Bill did to identify themselves as Billy.
Well, and do you think it was Brushy Bill, or do you think it was, other people pushing him?
I'm still undecided on that because, there have been times where I've suspected that Morrison put him up to it, but I've also I've talked with a man who is the grandson of Brushy's stepdaughter. So in 19, I think maybe 1912, and that could be wrong. Brushy Bill married a woman named Molly Brown, and Molly had a daughter named Jewel at that time. And so this guy I talked to, he is Jewel's grandson. So he's Brushy's step great grandson. And anyway, he said that, Brushy told his uncle back in, like, the early 1920s or the 1910s that he was Billy the Kid. So he was doing that stuff even back then. So and there is a claim, the author Don Klein claimed in his unpublished book on Brushy that at one point Brushy told people in Arkansas that he was Frank James, and Brushy's brother Tom had to come get him and bring him home. Um, but I've not found any documentation to verify that on my own. Um, and I hate to, if an author claims something without any source, I hate to say that that's a fact, because I can't verify it myself. But he could have been telling these tall tales, since he was a teenager. It's hard to say. So yeah, my inclination is that he said he was Billy the Kid on his own. Um, I really don't know. Reading Morrison's letters, I'm on the fence about whether he was in on it as a fraud or whether he really believed Brushy Bill. Um, because he's certainly convincing in his letters that he thinks he's Billy the Kid. Even after Brushy died, he went on a tirade to try to prove it. So it could be both right now, until we discover more information.
Right. And it's got to be convincing to some people because there's still a lot of people on board with the Brushy Bill story. And
Yeah, and that, to me it's unfortunate that it's convincing because it's really not. Um and I mean that respectfully. I try to be respectful of folks' opinions,
Mhm.
um and I know a lot of people that believe Brushy was Billy, and uh we get along, and but like, to me, all of the arguments for Brushy, and they'll say there's mountains of evidence, but there's really not. And you start asking for sources or documentation for this and that, and eventually they just kind of start insulting you, and accusing you of being some part of some huge conspiracy or historical Illuminati trying to suppress the truth, as if there was some reason that we don't want Billy the Kid to be Brushy Bill. Like, I would be thrilled if I found, evidence that pointed to Brushy being Billy. I would embrace it without hesitation. It's nothing about some political agenda. It's just that I don't see it. When I started when I got into Billy the Kid, I remember reading Dan Edwards and Morrison's book and all this stuff and thinking, this is amazing if it's true. This is big. And but I just started researching it myself, and it's not there. The documentation isn't there where they say it is. And so that's the problem. To give you an example, just just one example of the kind of stuff you run into. It's when I started the Chasing Billy channel, a gentleman commented and said, well, Pat Garrett's daughter even said that he didn't shoot Billy. And I said, I'm willing to accept that. That'll be a great point of evidence against the whole thing. Where can I find that? It's in a Western magazine. And that's the footnote. Like, it's in a Western magazine. Like, no source was ever provided. No, like, go here, go to True West, June 1962. Whatever. It's never given. It's always some vague, like, oh, it was this or that, and that's the problem. It's all of these anecdotes accepted and requoted over and over until it's accepted as fact. And that's why I don't know how much you've tuned in, um, Chasing Billy's part of the historical coalition, Billy the Kid's historical coalition, and we're kind of doing this thing called Do Better Dan, and we're
Yeah, I have
kind of
been watching that.
we're and it's a little there's a lot of showmanship to it, obviously, and people are like, well, it's immature and whatnot, but we're trying to bring awareness to the fact that for years and decades, really, we've been making these claims with no accountability. And one of the most recent things that we did, and I think is a good example of this, and people will say it's a small point, but really it's a big deal in giving you an example of the kind of stuff that goes on, is for years they've said that Brushy did so bad at the governor's meeting because he had a stroke, and he had a medical episode. And one author, which I believe might have been Valdez, so this wasn't Dan, but one author said that he even went to the doctor, that Morrison took Brushy to a Santa Fe doctor right after the meeting, and he was diagnosed. And that's been reprinted in blogs and Facebook posts, and people say, well, he went to a Santa Fe doctor. It never happened. They even give the doctor's name. I forget what it is at this time. It's like Dr. Larry something, but they gave the whole name, and there's no record of any doctor by that name in Santa Fe at that time. And it's like, you've got to start holding folks accountable for these sources. That's why when I said Brushy claimed he was Frank James, that came from Don Klein. Don did not give a source that I know of for that can be verified. So I can't say that's a certain, that's with any certainty. And so we really want to focus on making sure we can back up these claims. And if we can't, we need to dig in, isolate them, and say, this is why this story doesn't add up. And all of these things that we say are mountains of evidence are really just anecdotes without any sources at all. And that matters in history. That's how we find out the truth.
Right. What is the old saying? If you repeat it long enough, it becomes the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, yeah, I think has happened a lot. I mean, I've read a lot of the Brushy Bill stuff, and like you said, if it was true, I'd be all on board. But as far as the story that we're told, it's just so fantastical. Like it made, personally for me, I was like, it makes Forrest Gump look not fantastical.
Oh no, it's insane. And anybody who would believe that, it's like, it's absurd. And I mean, the thing is that any claim you make that's not falsifiable, that's kind of like cult level stuff, That's like, you say like, well, I was in the Rough Riders. Okay. Where did you enlist? In Oklahoma in this year. Okay, well, we went to those records and you're not there. Oh, well, he didn't use his name, obviously. It was a fake name. Oh, so we can't verify that. No. So you can't use that as a piece of evidence then, because it's not verifiable, it's not falsifiable. And that's basically the whole Brushy story. Is he did these things that you can't check out and that you can't verify. But of course you can't, because he was an outlaw. So obviously an outlaw would lie. Well, stop making the claim then. This guy in the 50s wanted to prove he was Billy the Kid. He needed to give us some verifiable evidence. He didn't do that. But like the whole reason I started personally, focusing on calling out Dan, was because he started making claims about Steve Cedarwall. He said, Steve runs Cold West,
Mhm.
and I don't mind if you put this on. I just don't know how in the weeds you want to get. I can talk about this stuff all night, but Steve runs Cold West, and Dan took it from him. Dan came in and said, I want to, work with you, and he ended up taking the whole legal rights to the brand. So Dan owns the Cold West brand. So Steve obviously is mad about that. And Steve said, if you don't give me my creation back, I'm going to burn it all down. I'm going to burn Cold West down. And so Dan made a video on YouTube saying, this man has threatened to kill me and my family. He's threatened to burn my house down and this and that. And, these are claims. So the same people that are making claims about Brushy and not using sources are the same people that will make up lies about people and make up criminal accusations to these people, accusing Steve, who's a friend of mine, of criminal behavior, and without any proof. If Dan got on and played a voicemail that he says he has, where Steve says, I'm going to kill you and your family, of course, yeah, that needs addressed. But if you're going to run your mouth over and over on these videos and say that my friend is doing these very absurd, illegal things that aren't cool, then I'm going to take issue with that. And that's the same kind of mentality that they approach the brushy thing with. Is this, you know, oh, well, I want this to be true, so it is. And I want to spin the narrative in this direction without any proof. And, you can see that in the most recent comments within the past month, Dan has changed his wording to, he's threatened to burn down Cold West. So he knows what he's doing, and it's unacceptable. And it applying that to history, we need to stop letting these folks shape history to how they want just for the sake of, I don't know, showmanship or making a buck or the success of their new book. I mean, it's got to be called out. And yeah, I know that gets dramatic and can sound petty, but I just wanted to shed some light on why we focus so much on Dan. Because, to use some YouTube or Young Guns terminology, you went after our pal. And I
Mhm.
don't like that. And it was uncool. But it was a greater opportunity for us to use it as a, hey, be accountable, quote sources, stop lying about history. And that's my rant over.
Because I think it's the same video. He pretty much talks about Michael without talking about Michael.
Oh no, he does. He does,
Yeah.
man. And listen, I'm not a fan of Michael's anymore. We had a falling out. But
Did you?
I have nothing to, yeah, and it was just it's just how it is, man. But I have nothing against him. And the guy is a creator. He's
Mhm.
written like how many books? He's
Like
made
10,
movies,
I
and
think. Yeah.
and to the fact that Dan has said so many of those really mean things about Michael that Michael doesn't have any control over. Michael's works with the budget he has to work with. And
Hmm.
Dan sits there and like trashes his films. And it's like, what can you do with a budget of what somebody's working on? And the fact is, Dan did put out a film and I paid $2 on Amazon to watch it.
Oh, I
And it's
forgot.
a
Yeah, the the
yeah,
photo
and it's
pic.
a
Yeah.
it's a 40-minute slideshow. It's terrible. So like he definitely doesn't have any room to criticize somebody's filmmaking skills at all. Now, and that bugs me. Like, I mentioned we had a falling out because that's to say I'm not a fan of Michael anymore. But what what Dan did and the way Dan talks about him is not acceptable. And I'll tell you this that in that same video that he tore Steve down, he accused Michael of trying to entrap him in some conspiracy to get him on his Trial of Billy the Kid show and to make him look like an idiot or whatever. And that I was talking to Michael when that film was being made, and I know that's not true. Michael wanted to fairly represent all angles, the John Miller one, the brushy one, and he tried to find anybody on the brushy end who was willing to do it, and he couldn't. There was no conspiracy to entrap Dan to make him look like an idiot. But
Yeah.
it's insane how crazy this get. We're talking about a field of history. We study a guy from 1881. It has no bearing on anything. And here we've got dudes running their mouth about like death threats and stuff. And it's like, why does this stuff matter that much, man? Like, why is there this much drama in this little niche of history?
Right. Yeah. No, I will say though, I reached out to Dan. And this was really early on because I read his book, and I just wanted to see if he'd come on the show and talk about it and
Right.
just have that open conversation on and give that side something to talk about. And I've never heard back. I've just
Yeah.
nothing. And I was like,
And I tried, before all this with Steve went down. I tend to run my mouth when someone attacks my friends, and I need to be in better control of it, but I didn't like it at all. It was low class. And but before all that, I actually had come across a letter quoted by William Tunstall in one of his Brushy books. From it was from Brushy, written to Uncle Kit Carson, that fraud in Arizona. And he mentions something in there that I don't think any Brushy Bill person knows about. And I was trying to shed some light on it and discuss it with Dan, and Dan immediately was just like, "Well, I can tell you that's a forgery. It's a fraud. That's not a authentic letter because it was not part of his knowledge base or his accepted dogma." And it was immediately shut down. And I was like, "Gosh, what kind of guy is this?" And I tried to comment on that video that he did about Steve and Michael, and I was banned from the channel. So it was like, obviously he doesn't want any free form of discussion. So, you know, it's his property. He can do what he wants on his lawn, I guess.
Right. I mean, Kit Carson's an interesting one. Matt can tell you before he went to the baseball game, I drug them to the cemetery, as I'm known to do, to go visit his grave.
The real Kit Carson or the
No, Uncle Kit Carson.
Uncle Kit Carson? Wow, very
Mhm.
cool.
No, Keegan
Yeah,
taking us to a place never happened. Ever.
I don't know if you did you see my video on Uncle Kit Carson?
No, not yet.
It's basically a blog I wrote that I just read on a video format, but I did a article on Kit, and he's a very interesting guy. I don't know, like if you know, before that he was his real name was Ora Woodman,
Hmm.
and he claimed he was a guy named Tommy Stringfield in
Okay.
Texas, and he started out as this guy named Two Braids, a white man who grew up in an Indian settlement, and he went with Wild West shows, and he was dressed in buckskins and stuff, and roped and lassoed, and and anyway, he came across this story of this guy named Tommy Stringfield, who, with his parents and his sister, were ambushed by Indians in Texas. Tommy disappeared. The sister survived. The parents were killed. And so Ora Woodman was like, "Hey, I'm going to get in with this family. I'm going to tell the sister I'm Tommy, that long lost Tommy." So he started doing that, and he started raising money for a monument and everything. And as that progressed, his sister figured out that he was lying. And so on the monument they built for the Stringfields in Texas, it says, "This monument was begun by the fraud Ora Woodman," and it's just hilarious. And he went from Tommy Stringfield to starting to be Kit Carson in the shows, and then he morphed into Uncle Kit Carson in Arizona or New Mexico. So yeah, very cool story.
Right. Yeah, no, these guys have seen their fair share of headstones because anytime we're somewhere, I'm like, what graves can we go visit? We film them, we put them up on usually as shorts, sometimes as videos. And, people are always like, well, who are they? I'm like, well, go research, find out. That's kind of the
Yeah,
fun of it, What,
that's very cool.
yeah, what is some of your favorite Billy the Kid movies outside of like Young Guns?
I would say probably my favorite is The Kid with Dane DeHaan. I think it's a great movie. Uh, Honestly, a lot of the action and the dialogue in it is pretty historically accurate too. It's pretty wild. Um, I think Vincent D'Onofrio, who directed that, he might have written it. I'm not sure, but he did a great job. And Ethan Ethan Hawke, he did a great job as Pat Garrett. I thought, not so much looking like him, but man, he just acted a great part. And Dane DeHaan, I think, captured a lot about how maybe Billy really was, that a lot of other movies don't capture. A lot of other movies focus heavily on the Robin Hood, archetype, whereas in The Kid, he was a bit more selfish than you see in a lot of the others, and it makes you wonder, did the kid have a selfish streak like he does in this movie? But that's one of my favorites. I'm not a huge fan of Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Love the soundtrack though. Listen to it all the time. Um, Other than that, I don't have many. I don't even know how many more there are.
Oh, we did a
Oh,
whole March
oh,
Madness bracket with them.
yeah, Old Henry. Old Henry's fantastic.
Mhm.
Fantastic. And when he puts that gun belt on,
Yeah.
and he's like, he puts the hat on, and the guy's looking at the newspaper and looking back up, it's like, I got chills. I was like, that's like Rambo suiting up, getting ready to go kill them all. It's just awesome.
Yeah, that part where he's like, "You're him. You're Billy the
Yeah.
Kid." Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I went to church.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that one's really good. Yeah, we love the kid. Dane DeHaan was our number one Billy when we did a really old
Yeah.
top 10 Billy the Kid actors. And I think one thing I
Fantastic.
like about him was he looks dirty, like he actually
Yeah.
lived in the Wild
Yeah.
West, you know. Um, Jarrell was close. I think just because Jarrell looks a lot like what we think Billy the Kid would look like. I'm trying to think
Uh-huh.
what else. We like Val Kilmer. I'm not sure we like the movie.
Exactly. Yeah. The movie's terrible in my opinion. I can't stand it. But Val Kilmer was great.
Right. I always wonder though, what if James Dean had been able to play Billy the Kid instead of,
Right.
Newman, how it would have
Yeah,
turned
and
out.
but I really didn't mind Newman's movie either. It's not bad. I like it. There's a movie based on Billy, and it's really funny because
Oh, is it One
sometimes
Eyed
I'll watch.
Jacks?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I
And what
love One Eyed
happened was,
Jacks.
yeah, and what happened was I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch a movie that's not related to Billy because all I was in this phase. All I do is read Billy books and watch Billy movies. So I'm gonna watch One Eyed Jacks. I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, wait a second. So I look it up and I'm like, this is, I can't escape it. I can't escape
Right?
Billy. And then I bought the book that's based on, and I read the book, and it's pretty good too.
Right. Yeah, no, because I'm a big Blu-ray collector, and there's a boutique label called Criterion, and so I picked it up, and one of the cells is a blind buy, and I was watching it. I'm like, man, this is so similar, especially the ending, where he escapes from Slim Pickens, kind of like Billy did, and I'm like,
Right.
uses his own gun. I'm like, oh, what is this? So I looked into it. I'm like, of course, I'd be drawn back to
Yeah.
it. Yeah, no,
It's
I
fantastic.
love that movie.
It's a good movie. Yeah, and the book was pretty cool too. It's called
Henry
The Authentic,
Jones.
yeah, The Authentic Death of Henry Jones, I think.
Yeah, I'll play on
Yeah.
the Pat. What is your thoughts on Pat Garrett's book?
It's largely fabricated. I think when he starts talking about the things he was involved in, you can give it a little bit of weight, you know.
Yeah,
But it's funny because all the brushy Bill folks and people who are kind of on that side of the fence kind of accuse us folks who don't buy the brushy story of being like Pat Garrett loyalists and being like, "Well, you just believe everything Pat Garrett says," and all that. But like, I don't put a lot of stock in Pat at all. If I had to pick who the most authoritative source on eyewitness events was, I'd pick Poe, John Poe. But the early parts, it's just terrible. It's a terrible book, but some of the stuff's interesting, and I think everything Pat says is kind of colored by his self ambition and his desire to make himself look good. And so you got to take everything he says with a grain of salt. But I do think his account of Stinking Spring and Fort Sumner are worth reading.
I do believe Pat Garrett killed Billy in Fort Sumner, and we've been to like that little. There's a marker in the field which is off by a little bit, but I think it might not be 100% how it happened,
Right.
but because I think it might have happened in Paulita's room, and I've always thought this because I've read a book that collects newspaper articles,
Uh-huh.
and there was one shortly after the killing where the people of Fort Sumner were accusing um, uh, Garrett and Poe and
Pete.
everybody
Mm.
of like tying up like Paulita and kind of using her as bait.
Yeah.
And so that's always stuck in the back of my mind. And I'm like, I could see that happening because why didn't he leave? And like, what is he still going back to see?
Yeah, there are a lot of
Pat knew him
questions.
a little bit.
There are a lot of questions,
Right.
absolutely. I mean, even why, when you're going to hunt this guy down, this fugitive, why do you insist on taking two people that have never seen Billy before? you know,
Right.
you could have taken a lot of people. It's just, there are a lot of open-end questions and things that don't make sense. But I think a lot of times life just happens chaotically, and the way it happens is not always going to satisfy logic or how you want a story to turn out, and I think that's what bothers people the most. um and until we get more info, we can explore all those questions and that room for what could have happened. But in the main, I think, yeah, it went down. Basically, the result was Billy died that night.
Right.
However it went down, and whoever was involved. But yeah, that's where I land, that he died that night.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of questions, but again, it's part of the fun is maybe one day we'll figure it out or
Yeah.
now maybe I don't want to figure it out because it gives the next generation something to look forward to.
Right. And maybe when we figure it all out, how boring will it be then?
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the coalition because you guys have cool projects that especially with headstones on unmarked graves, which we're appreciative of.
Oh yeah, that's the biggest thing that got me into it, because before I got into Billy, since about 2010, I've been a genealogist of my own family tree, and a big part of that, it's not just an academic pursuit for me; it's wanting to honor and remember the dead. And so, a big part of my own personal journey has always been going to cemeteries and visiting my ancestors, but also marking unmarked graves of my ancestors. And I've got a cousin who I do it with, and we've always been very passionate about it. And so as I got into Billy and I started looking at these, historical research and getting in these communities, I saw this group that was marking headstones and marking unmarked graves. I mean, and I was like, this is exactly, I mean, this is my wheelhouse. And I thought it was really cool that a group was doing something to preserve history and to make sure it stuck around for future generations, even in a better format than it was, because these graves have been unmarked for so long. um, and so when I got involved, the coalition was already, it had put its first journal out, and it was going, it was full steam, and they were in the process of marking Carlisle's grave, Jim Carlisle, who was shot at the Great House Ranch, the Great House Tavern. And I thought that was just awesome. First off, I didn't know that Carlisle had been in an unmarked grave for so long, just a pile of rocks. And so, to find out that tragedy, because any unmarked grave is a tragedy to me, and then to find out that someone was doing something about it, it immediately piqued my interest. So I joined up and was just a member for a while, and then Josh actually appeared on Michael's show, and was talking about various sites and things like that. And in the show, he had mentioned that he loved the historical sites. That was kind of his passion, and that he loved to help folks who were coming into New Mexico and kind of telling them where to go, and kind of the itinerary of sequence of places to visit that were best for travel. And so I had some friends who were going to Lincoln, and so I messaged Josh out of the blue. Was like, "Hey, you don't know me? I'm a member of the coalition. I've got some friends coming to Lincoln. Uh, Heard your podcast with Michael. Thought maybe you'd want to help out with their itinerary. They'd never been." And he jumped at it and wrote up a great itinerary for them. And so that's how I got to know Josh. And so the more we talked, the more things kind of progressed to where I became a board member on the coalition. So now the coalition consists of Josh and Jeremiah, who are their brothers, and they're great folks. They're the directors. They started it with another guy who's not part of it anymore. And Ben Doss, myself, and a gentleman named Mike Morrison are on the board of directors. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to keep history from fading away. And a large part of that is marking headstones. For instance, you know, we've got Tom Pickett had an unmarked grave. This is a guy who ran with Billy the Kid. He's part of his gang. And since his death in the 30s, no one's marked his grave. It's just insane to think about. We've marked Cahill's grave, Frank Cahill. He had an unmarked grave. Chavez, the
Chavez y
Mr. Lou
Chavez.
Diamond Phillips, yeah, Lou Diamond Phillips himself, uh, had no marked grave, and it's insane to think about. So we're working on more. There's a lot more that need it. Right now, we're trying to figure out how to approach marking Ollinger and Beckwith's graves, and maybe Crawford too, since he's right there with them. You got Crawford, that scene from Young Guns. But I mean, it's there's more that we want to do too. I mean, it's not just about marking graves. That's just one way we can preserve history. But there's so many bigger projects to do, and so many more ways to preserve history, and to make sure that we get it right, and we get other generations interested, and that this thing keeps going on, and that it keeps going on strongly and well. not just, limping along.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a important thing that we love to do is just tell people stories as well, and keep the history alive for future generations. Like we did a video on a dam collapse here in Castle Rock, and just came across a little nugget that there was a guy that owned some land called the Potato King. And so we found his grave. We went and told his whole story, went and told these locations. And I was like, that felt really fulfilling, you know?
Oh, it
Um,
is.
yeah. Did you guys put up the Juanita Martinez Garrett headstone?
No, we didn't. I believe that was the Wild West Historical Coalition.
Okay.
And I do know that that's Roy Young. Was I don't know if he's still the president of that group. We work real closely with them, and we're good friends with them. And I believe Steve Cedarwall and Cold West helped out with that as well. Um, but yeah, it's something we were very encouraging of, and we thought it was an awesome thing to see. I'd like to know more about her too. We don't know much about her.
Right. Yeah, I know one time we were, because every time we come back, we stop and pay our respects to Billy. And just one day there was a headstone there that wasn't there before. And
Right?
so now we filmed it. We put it on the channel so people can see it. And yeah,
Well, and
now we,
now Michael worked with one of our members, Fred. Fred does signs and things like that. And they put up the Delavina marker
mhm.
in Fort Sumner, and I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah, yeah, we got a video of that. I think we were there like a couple weeks after it had been put up, and it was so
Nice.
neat to see because Delavina's is in it's Santa Fe, right? But no one really knows.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Michael had trouble, like, communicating and getting the go ahead from the folks at that cemetery. I don't think they were really communicative about working to do something there. So I think a little memorial sign at Fort Sumner was a great idea.
Is Delavina's one that you guys hope to do one day? Like try to find it?
Oh, it would be fantastic. It just depends on, I think those records may have been lost. It sounds so cliche, but so many records get lost in fires that like, it's like what's going on here? But I think that was the case. Or, for some other reason they were lost. But I recall the prospects of finding her grave were not huge.
Well, what about I know we've talked about him a lot. Brushy Bill, his grave's in unmarked, right?
I mean, he's got a marker in
Hmm.
Heiko. Uh, I don't think his grave's unmarked. He's towards the back. I've never been there, but I know there's that one little headstone, and it says Oliver Roberts, and like the S is backwards, and it's very very homemade. And then he's got a larger one up front that says Billy the Kid, Brushy Bill Roberts, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure because I've only seen the big one.
I
Well,
do
Where do you
direct
guys live?
snowstorms, but that's about it.
Are you guys all in the same state?
Yeah,
Colorado, yeah.
Colorado.
Oh, that's awesome. I bet that's really cool.
It's not too bad. We live in Castle Rock, so kind of in the middle of the state. So, to go to Wyoming's 3 hours, Kansas 3 hours, New Mexico's 3 hours. So we're pretty lucky there. Yeah, we do
It's like
lots of road trips.
It's like George Clooney says in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Geographical oddity, 2 weeks from everywhere.
Right. What about like Billy the Kids that weren't Billy the Kids? Because there's one in Kansas that we want to go film about where he went by the moniker Billy the Kid, but he obviously wasn't the real Billy the Kid. Like, have
Right.
you dug much into those fellows?
I come across them a lot researching newspapers, and I thought it would be cool to kind of do a little article or a booklet on all the Billy the Kids, because one of the biggest ones after Billy died was Billy Burke, who was a bank robber in New York, and he went all over the eastern side of the states, and he was known as Billy the Kid. But I think he even went to England and was captured in England, and he was a big deal. And he was jailed in Albany, and I think he escaped a lot. So I think they've even got some photos of him. So it would be cool to do a little piece on him, I think. Um, and then there was one, I think, in Colorado
Mhm.
who ended up getting lynched uh, by a mob for stealing horses. And I found two mentions of a Billy the Kid that was a female down in like maybe Kansas or Oklahoma or something like that. So there's a ton of them. Ton of them. There was a African American gambler in Texas named Billy the Kid that got shot. Tons of them.
Yeah, I have an old book called Sunset Slope. I'll send you the pictures because it shows like Billy the Kid here, his death picture, because they were big on, well, sort of big. It depends where you were in the Old West, but yeah, I guess more big on showing dead bodies than we do today, right?
Right, yeah.
You brought up Billy the Kid as a female. Have you seen the Billy the Kid as a female movie?
No, I didn't know there was one.
Yeah, where she fights vampires.
Of course. I love it.
That was another one we were gonna have John talk about, just because there's a strange amount of Billy the Kid vampire. Like, there's a whole
Yeah.
subgenre of that.
Yeah, it's like if you did one story, you'd think you have the market cornered on that, but I
Oh,
did I'm doing a serialized Billy the Kid zombie series in John's Strange West magazine. So,
sorry.
I'm trying to corner the zombie market on it.
Yeah, I had one commenter, Misty James. I think I've seen
Yeah,
her in some
yeah.
of yours. Um,
Yeah, she's great.
yeah, she commented on one of our videos on our dinosaurs, and I was like, yeah, I think maybe one day I'll make a novel of Billy the Kid versus a dinosaur or something,
Yes,
just
do
something
it.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, besides Billy the Kid, you like music, right? And you write and
Yeah,
perform.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a musician, songwriter.
So where did
Yeah, I play
that like come
guitar.
about?
I started, I played trombone in high school. And I didn't even intend to. I didn't mean to. I I came out of elementary school into junior high, and I didn't play sports, and I was very shy, so I didn't know what electives to pick. And I signed up for band, and I didn't play anything. I never played any instruments. And my my sister, and she was my half sister, so I grew up an only child. She had a son, my nephew. She said, he has a trombone. I said, well, okay. So I show up at school with a trombone I didn't even know how to put together, and it's in pieces. And we're in band, and I look around, and everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody's like putting their instruments together, testing the spit valves and putting their reeds in their saxophones and all that, and tuning up. And it's like, I'm like, I believe I'm a little outside of my pay grade here. And so I called the band director over, and I'm like, Mr. Lilly, I don't know how to do any of this. I don't know how to play music. And he looked at me in a second, and he goes, we'll figure it out. And so he went back. And so I learned how to play trombone by sitting with my five other trombone players in the band. And when this little black note on the paper showed up, they went to this position, and I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I learned, but I learned. And by ninth grade, I was auditioning for the jazz band, and I made it. So that was super fun. Um, but I wasn't in band in high school. I didn't want to do the complicated marching, of weird geometrical, I told you about my problems with space and time. And so, but I saw a buddy of mine playing guitar, and I thought, man, everybody thinks he's cool. So I was like, I'm gonna learn how to play guitar. And I did. I learned how to play guitar and started my first band in '95. And I've been playing since. I've been writing music, and my three biggest influences are probably John Prine, John Lennon, and Bob Dylan. And so that's to give you an idea of the style of music I may write. It's along those lines.
Yeah, no, we love music. You asked before we started, like, our kind of the topics of our show. Music's probably our third one. We have a lot of musicians on the channel, and we just love
Nice.
hearing all the different like ways people make music or their inspirations and stuff. You did mention jazz band, and we covered a movie about a jazz band called Whiplash. Have you seen that?
Never, no,
Oh
never
man,
seen that.
it's so good.
Worth a watch. I don't know. I see Sam kind of like
No,
shaking his
it's
head or
it's
laugh.
it's worth the watch. Like, if you haven't seen it, like when I first watched it, I was just like, man, this is really intense. But
Yeah,
um It was really good. Like it's a really good movie, but like it definitely goes extremes in a direction that's like not really that way.
Right. Yeah, no, we did a deep dive on that one with his cousin Nick, who's a drummer, and then our buddy Shane, who's a drummer, and then Jarrell, because Jarrell plays guitar. Um, and we were like talking about it, and it's so fun watching them like break down the when they're playing and not playing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, do you
That's
find
like
yourself doing that?
there's a movie that I love because I grew up on it. There are movies that you like because you grew up on them, but they're not really good movies. But I love the Eddie and the Cruiser movies, and I'm pretty sure they're like once I learned how to play guitar to go back and watch Eddie Wilson play the guitar in these movies, it's like he doesn't know what he's doing. Like it's just bad.
Right.
And you see that a lot. You see it a lot on TV shows too because they can't take the time to make it look authentic. They don't care.
Yeah, we talked to Brett Hendricks on our last interview, and he's a country musician. And he was saying like he's gotten to the point now when he goes to concert, he's like looking at their straps and seeing what they got, like their equipment.
Yeah.
Like, do you find yourself doing that?
Yeah, and it's odd because it's I'm an oddity, and there's a few of us. My drummer's the same way. Like I don't really enjoy live music, and I know that's weird. But it's because I think in part because of stuff like that. I find myself out of the experience and more into like what kind of amp is he using, or like, well, that was you know a mistake, or that was an improv. And it's like it's too analytical at this point. It's kind of like you get behind the curtain, and it kind of takes the magic away a little bit. I love listening to music and albums, and I love the concept of an album because I don't know if it's the generation I was raised in, but I noticed that in today's society it's more about a single, like because of the medium that music is released on, the MP3 and the streaming age, that it's like, hey, we did a new song, here it is, and we just put it out. Whereas, growing up with cassette tapes and CDs, you waited for an album, and you took it home and you opened it up and looked at the liner notes, and you sat down and listened to the whole thing, or you put it in your car as you drove. And to me, the album was the whole experience. I'll hang out with folks now and they'll be like, check this one song out, and I'm like, hold on, I want to listen to the whole album. I want to see the entire image they're given. I want to see the whole thing, the whole concept. And I don't even know if it's like that anymore, but it's how I think. And so I get more out of driving and listening to an album and experiencing it that way than I do at a live show, or any other way. And I'm not a big fan of people. So like, I start getting irritated by people at live shows, and they start really bugging me, and that takes away from it too.
Well, and what about like, is there more of a synergy in the past with an album than there is now, where all the songs kind of flow together, whereas now it's all different types of. It's not one story, kind
Yeah,
of.
I think there would have to be, because because the nature of the media has changed so much that it affects the artist too. You know, they don't think so much about a whole album having some sort of coherence. They just think about the song they're going to release and put out. And they know that people aren't going to listen to an album sequentially and as a whole. So I don't think it really would benefit them much to think that way anymore. Whereas, back then, that you'd think, well, we want this vibe and this song at the beginning, and here's some good middle tunes, and kind of tie it all in with this kind of tempo and stuff. And it's not played in that manner anymore, I don't think. So yeah, I think that affects the artist as much as the listener.
Right, yeah, not too many people trying to make like The Wall, where it's just like one
Hmm.
story. What's the music scene like out there in West Virginia?
It's pretty terrible. It, there are pockets of cool scenes, but it's just like, you guys ever heard of Tyler Childers?
I haven't.
I have.
So I guess you could classify him as country, but it's kind of like alt country, Americana. And anyway, he's real big now, but he kind of in this tri-state area of West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio, he was on this scene, and he was just like any of the rest of us. He's played gigs that I've played. He's played the venues that I played, and folk, you can't throw a rock in this town without hitting somebody that knows Tyler. And the problem is that he's succeeded. He's become a great success, but he has so influenced this scene because of that. Because now everybody thinks, hey, if I kind of do the Tyler thing, they're going to pick me up and I'm going to be famous. That I feel like it's trending the style in this area in a certain direction, that like, so it's all this just Americana alt country style, and it's like all you see, and I imagine it's probably the same thing people felt like in Seattle when the grunge movement took off, and it was like everybody's trying to be like Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and it's like just it's all I see are flannels and Doc Martens, and I don't know what to do. It's kind of like that. It's very stylistically monopolized here, but I think that if I were in Pennsylvania or the Carolinas or New York or California, obviously there would be a lot more venues. But it's all right. I mean, I have places to play. Uh, at least if I wanted to, I could play somewhere every week. But I usually do about 4 gigs a month, 4 or 5 good ones. I'm a songwriter, and I could find more work, I guess, if I played a lot of covers and played a lot of, chart topping songs and for entertainment. Um, and there's absolutely nothing wrong at all with that. I have a lot of friends that do that and get a lot of work. But I play music to write, and to express what I've got within. And there's not a big market for original music, I don't think, anywhere. Um, but you got to find your people, and so I focus a lot of times on online and sharing stuff, on YouTube and um, streaming and all that good stuff. But I'm a rare breed, man. I don't focus on a lot of the production and marketing and branding. I think music is so cluttered nowadays with branding and with making an image out of yourself that it frankly disgusts me. So like one of my favorite albums is Bob Dylan's first album, and I love it because it's just him and a guitar, and you can hear the stool creak if he moves, and I just love that organic raw nature. And so a lot of the stuff that I record are for streaming. It's just for people to hear my songs. It's just me and an acoustic, and if you like it, then that's awesome. And so for me, it's not about having a brand or playing the scene so much as just wanting people to hear my music and hoping they like it.
I have to ask before we end off too, because you're in West Virginia, and we have
Yep.
talked to people from both these cities, or at least researchers. What have you been to Point Pleasant or Braxton County?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to Point Pleasant. Yeah, a lot. My sister actually lived there for a long time. Actually, my nephew and his wife, they own a coffee shop, or my nephew's wife's parents own it in Point Pleasant still. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I've been there quite often.
What are your
Why?
thoughts on
What
that
happened? What
Flatwoods?
happened in Point Pleasant? What happened in Point Pleasant?
Well, I mean, I guess the Silver Bridge is the bigger
Right.
answer to
Yeah.
that one. We talked to
No.
these researchers, Bill and Jackie Kuselis from Illinois, but they traveled down there and they did a whole study on with a lot of the original people from either they
Mhm.
were on the bridge, they had family on the bridge, or they just lived in the town and knew people, and just it was post traumatic growth and seeing how they grew after the events. And of
Wow.
course, they mentioned Mothman because
Mm.
it's really big out there, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. Yeah. Lot of cryptid art around here. A
right.
lot of good stuff. Yeah, and I've got a lot of cool friends who do art and have some cool Mothman stuff, and maybe I can send you guys some stickers or something that they've done. But it's cool, man. I've read the Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, and I've read about almost every other book of his that I could find. I really liked it, and I love high strangeness and all that stuff. And so um, it's very fascinating to me, that whole part of our history. And Point Pleasant's a cool town. If you're ever out on this side of the world, it's definitely worth a visit. It's a nice little town, real antiquated, and the Mothman statues there.
Right. Yeah, no, I've our buddy David filmed a whole episode up there, and then, like I said, we became friends with Bill and Jackie, and man, the way they talk about it and just how nice the people were in West Virginia to
Uh-huh.
them and just welcoming. Like, yeah, we want to go out there, but we heard the Mothman Festival is just crazy. So
No, I'm
it's
sure it
hard.
is. I've never
Yeah.
actually been to the festival because it is. I bet it's crazy. I've gone out there on my own before and just actually we did a battle of the bands out there once a decade ago or so, and we ended up winning. And it started storming right after the winner was announced, and we took off and we were driving back and saw about 5 little tornadoes out in the out in the valley. It was insane. But that was, you know, that was an interesting trip. But we ate at an old hotel diner that looked like it came straight out of the early 1900s, and very cool trip. It's probably about an hour from me. So,
Okay.
yeah, not
Not
bad
too
at
far.
all.
Yeah, no, we've been going to that Roswell Festival, and it's just so much fun. I love all the people we can meet, and it's fun. I don't know. Even if you, I tell people, I'm like, even if you don't believe in the UFOs, just go visit. It's fun,
Yeah,
especially during
yeah.
the
I
festival
don't.
time.
I personally subscribe to the fact, like, I don't really know that they're extraterrestrials. I think they're just some sort of interdimensional beings messing with us, man.
Yeah,
Like the
man.
same thing that they called the fairy folk back in the day. It's like the same tricksters just messing with us. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, we've talked a little bit about interdimensional things, be it UFOs or
Yeah.
I read a book about it's Bigfoot, but it's interdimensional Bigfoots from Texas. It was
Huh.
interesting. Yeah, it's by Tom Burnett and
Interesting.
Rob Riggs. I'll send you a picture of what the book looks like. It's
Awesome.
it's weird because it starts off like if you've read any Bigfoot book, it's like that, just stories. And then all of a sudden it transfers into their interdimensional and they're flying in the UFOs and stuff. And you're like, whoa, how did it get there?
Man.
But it's fun.
Did you guys ever watch the documentary Hellier about Hellier,
Mm-mm.
Kentucky? It's a pretty cool show. I think it's free on YouTube. It's an awesome show.
Well, I'll check it out. My dad used to live in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky.
Okay.
And yeah, my college was
Yeah.
Louisville, and I've been to Waverly Hills and stuff. Kentucky is one of the like kind of like New Mexico. It's just something
Yeah.
different about it, you know.
There is, and they talk about that in that show. I mean, I go to Kentucky a bit for music, and it's a special place too.
Yeah, no, I love. I'm trying to get these guys out to at least Louisville, but Lexington's pretty nice, or Frankfurt and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, all good places. Well, thank you, James, again for joining us and
Hmm.
staying for a bit. We'll have to have you back on.
yeah.
Maybe we'll do some deep dives on some movies or something.
Oh, it'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah, we
and
should
if you
have
want to talk
you.
about supernatural stuff too, I'm all about that.
Oh yeah, we'll have to have
Sweet.
you on one of our. We do big panel shows,
Yeah.
and so we'll have a bunch. Like we had Reverend Michael J.S. Carter from Ancient Aliens on it,
Oh, great.
and we had a couple people from West Virginia. We had Bill and Jackie, David, and we talked about UFOs. But maybe we'll have you on for our next cryptid one.
That'd be fantastic, man.
Yeah. Well, before we leave, though, for anyone watching or listening to us, where can they find more about you, the coalition, your YouTube show, and your music?
Yeah, so mainly if you just go to my YouTube channel, Chasing Billy, you can find all the information you need on the coalition. And on Facebook, you can check out the Chasing Billy Facebook page or the Billy the Kids Historical Coalition group. And if you want to listen to my music, just look up James Townsend on whatever platform you use to listen. And I hope you like it. And other than that, man, those portals should get you to the right places.
Well, sweet. Thank you again for joining us. This was an exciting one. As soon as you were like, "Yeah, I'll join," I was like, "Sweet!" I told Matt and Sam right away. Like, I was so excited because I was watching one of your shows. Matt, was that you?
Yeah, I was just sending a clapping emoji. I was showing gratitude.
uh yeah, I was watching one of your shows and I was like, hey, I'm just gonna reach out. That's kind of how we've done it from outside of
Yeah.
when Mark books us a show. I'm just like reaching out to people. So yeah, thank you so much. Once again, we want to say thank you to James for joining us for this awesome show. And really, guys, go make sure you check out the Chasing Billy YouTube channel. Lots of great shows and content, and we know you guys will definitely enjoy it. As well, go check out James's music. We would appreciate if you did, and we know he would as well. And this was such a fantastic conversation. We know we'll be having James back on in the future, so stay tuned. But until next time, for more Culz interviews, including our conversation with Brett Hendricks, click that link to your left. For more about what we're doing here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know if you've seen James's show. What was your favorite episode? Tell us in the comments below.